The conference room fell silent when Preston Hartley slammed his fist on the mahogany table. I sat frozen in my chair, watching my CEO's face turn red with rage. His expensive suit couldn't hide the vein throbbing in his temple. My name is Nina Castellano, 34 years old, Director of Business Development at Hartley Industries. For 6 years, I'd built my reputation on careful risk assessment and solid deal-making. That Tuesday morning at 10:15, everything I'd worked for was about to explode. The Meridian Tech acquisition had collapsed overnight. $28 million down the drain. Their board walked away citing operational concerns we should have caught during due diligence. Preston stood at the head of the table, his silver hair perfectly styled despite his fury. 15 executives watched as he pointed directly at me. Nina pushed this deal through against my warnings, he announced, his voice cold as winter. I explicitly told her the numbers didn't add up. She ignored my concerns and bulldozed ahead anyway. My heart stopped. That was a complete lie. Preston had approved every single stage of the Meridian acquisition. He'd sat in this exact room 5 weeks ago and called it the opportunity of the decade. But looking around the table, I saw doubt flickering in my colleagues' eyes. Nobody questioned the CEO. Nobody challenged Preston Hartley, whose family name was literally on the building. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but Preston cut me off. The board is considering termination, he continued. This level of incompetence is unacceptable. We've lost investor confidence and damaged our reputation in the tech sector. All because someone thought they knew better than executive leadership. His eyes locked onto mine. Cold. Calculating. He was making me the scapegoat for a deal he'd personally championed. I gripped the edge of the table to keep my hands from shaking. Preston, that's not accurate, I said carefully. You approved the due diligence timeline. You signed off on the risk assessment. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. My heart stopped. That was a complete lie. Preston had approved every single stage of the Meridian acquisition. He'd sat in this exact room 5 weeks ago and called it the opportunity of the decade. But looking around the table, I saw doubt flickering in my colleagues' eyes. Nobody questioned the CEO. Nobody challenged Preston Hartley, whose family name was literally on the building. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but Preston cut me off. The board is considering termination, he continued. This level of incompetence is unacceptable. We've lost investor confidence and damaged our reputation in the tech sector. All because someone thought they knew better than executive leadership. His eyes locked onto mine. Cold. Calculating. He was making me the scapegoat for a deal he'd personally championed. I gripped the edge of the table to keep my hands from shaking. Preston, that's not accurate, I said carefully. You approved the due diligence timeline. You signed off on the risk assessment. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The subject line had been clear. Meridian Tech acquisition, executive approval required. I remembered writing it, remembered Preston's enthusiastic response. But when I searched my sent folder, the email wasn't there. My hands went cold. I searched by date, by keyword, by recipient. Nothing. The entire thread had vanished. I checked my deleted folder, my archive, my drafts. Gone. All of it. Systematically erased. I sat back in my leather chair and stared at the screen. Preston had known exactly what he was doing. He'd had Carlos wipe the evidence before calling that meeting, before publicly blaming me for his own decision. My office phone rang. I ignored it, pulled up my calendar instead. Every meeting about Meridian Tech was still there. The dates and times proved I hadn't acted alone. March 15th, 9 a.m. Meridian Acquisition Strategy Session with Preston Hartley. March 22nd, 2 p.m. Risk Assessment Review with Executive Team. April 3rd, 11 a.m. Final Approval Meeting, CEO Sign-Off. The calendar entries existed, but without the emails, without documentation, it was my word against his. That afternoon, I sat in the HR director's office. Pamela Cross was 56, professional, and completely loyal to Preston. She'd worked at Hartley Industries for 20 years. Her office smelled like lavender and had motivational posters about teamwork. Nina, she said gently, folding her hands on her desk. I know this is difficult, but we need to discuss your future here. I kept my voice steady. I want to be clear. Preston approved every aspect of the Meridian deal. He was personally involved in all major decisions. Pamela nodded sympathetically. I understand you feel that way. But Preston has provided documentation showing he raised concerns multiple times. Concerns you apparently dismissed. My jaw clenched. What documentation? She turned her computer monitor toward me. An email thread I'd never seen before. Dated March 16th. From Preston to me. The subject line read concerns about Meridian timeline. In it, Preston expressed worry about rushing due diligence, questioned the financial projections, suggested I slow down and reconsider the approach. My response, according to this email, was dismissive and overconfident. I've never seen this email before in my life, I said flatly. It's fabricated. Pamela's expression hardened slightly. That's a serious accusation, Nina. I have the original email right here in the system. Are you suggesting the CEO forged correspondence? Yes, I said. That's exactly what I'm suggesting. She closed her laptop with a soft click. I think you should take some time to consider your position. We're placing you on administrative leave, effective immediately. 2 weeks paid while we investigate. But I'd strongly suggest you use that time to think about how you want to proceed. Translation: resign quietly or face termination. I stood up slowly. My career was burning down around me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I walked back to my office. Keisha had tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry, she whispered. This isn't right. I forced a smile. It'll be okay. But I didn't believe it. I started packing my personal items into a cardboard box. 6 years of work reduced to photos and coffee mugs. That evening, I sat in my apartment staring at my laptop. I'd made copies of everything months ago. It was a habit I'd developed after watching another director get fired suddenly last year. Every important email I'd forwarded to my personal account. Every document I'd saved to an encrypted cloud drive. Preston didn't know about my backup system. Nobody did. I opened my personal email and searched for Meridian. Hundreds of emails populated the screen. Every conversation I'd had with Preston about the deal. Every approval he'd given. Every enthusiastic response. The real timeline was all there, preserved outside the company system Preston controlled. I found the March 15th email, the one that had vanished from the company server. Preston's response had been crystal clear. Nina, this is exactly the kind of opportunity we need. Fast-track the due diligence. I want this deal closed by end of Q2. You have my full support. Let's make it happen. No concerns, no hesitation, just aggressive enthusiasm. I took screenshots of everything, printed hard copies, saved multiple backups. The next morning, I called my college roommate, Allison Park. She was a corporate attorney now, specializing in employment law. We met at a coffee shop downtown, away from anywhere connected to Hartley Industries. Allison listened as I explained everything. The failed deal, Preston's public blame, the missing emails, the fabricated evidence. She leaned back in her chair when I finished, her expression serious. Nina, what Preston did is illegal. Fabricating emails to justify termination? That's fraud. If you can prove it, you have grounds for a major lawsuit. I pulled out my folder of printed emails. I can prove it. I have everything archived outside the company system. Allison flipped through the pages, her eyes widening. This is gold. Every approval, every enthusiastic response. The timeline proves Preston was driving the acquisition, not you. She looked up. But you need to be strategic. If you go to the board now, Preston will bury you with lawyers and resources. You need leverage, something that forces the board to act. What kind of leverage? I asked. Allison tapped the folder. Preston fabricated evidence. That means he knew he was lying, which means he's hiding something bigger. Why would a CEO risk fraud charges just to blame a director for one failed deal? I thought about it. The Meridian acquisition had been Preston's pet project. He'd been obsessed with breaking into the tech sector, proving Hartley Industries wasn't just old manufacturing money. The failure had embarrassed him in front of investors. But was that enough to justify fabricating evidence? Unless, I said slowly, there's something about the deal he doesn't want investigated. Allison nodded. Exactly. Failed acquisitions happen. But if there's fraud in how the deal was structured, or if Preston personally benefited somehow, that's criminal. You need to dig deeper. Find out why he's so desperate to pin this on you instead of just taking responsibility. I thought about the due diligence reports, the financial projections, the operational assessments. What had we missed? Or more importantly, what had Preston told me to ignore? That week, I lived in my apartment surrounded by documents. I'd requested copies of everything from the Meridian deal before my access was cut off. Hundreds of pages of contracts, financial statements, and assessment reports. I started at the beginning, reading every word. On day 3, I found it. A consulting fee buried in the acquisition costs. $500,000 paid to Hartley Strategic Advisory. The name sounded official, like an internal division, but I'd never heard of it. I searched the company directory. No listing. I checked the corporate structure documents. No such entity existed within Hartley Industries. My pulse quickened. I ran a business registration search online. Hartley Strategic Advisory was a consulting firm registered in Delaware 2 years ago. The sole owner listed was Preston Hartley. My hand started shaking. Preston had paid himself $500,000 through a shell company. Money that came out of the acquisition budget. Money that should have gone toward due diligence or been returned to investors when the deal collapsed. I called Allison immediately. That's embezzlement, she said flatly. He used company funds to pay his personal consulting firm. Even if the deal had succeeded, that's illegal without board disclosure. And since it failed, he's desperate to avoid anyone looking too closely at where the money went. This is why he's framing you. I felt sick. Preston had risked my career, my reputation, to cover up his own theft. How do I prove the board didn't know? I asked. Allison was quiet for a moment. Board meeting minutes. If Preston disclosed the consulting fee properly, it would be in the official records. If it's not there, he hid it. And that's fraud on top of embezzlement. The next morning, I reached out to someone I'd never thought I'd contact. Keisha, my former assistant. We met at a park near her apartment. She was nervous, kept glancing around like Preston's security team might appear. I need the board meeting minutes from March through April, I told her. The ones about the Meridian acquisition. Keisha bit her lip. Those are confidential. I could get fired. I know, I said gently, and I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. But Preston is covering up embezzlement, Keisha. He stole company money and blamed me to hide it. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone. I already copied them, she said quietly. After what he did to you, I knew something was wrong. I've been waiting for you to ask. She forwarded me the files right there. For board meetings about the Meridian acquisition, I read through them on my laptop in the park, my coffee going cold beside me. March 15th meeting. Meridian acquisition approved. Budget outlined. No mention of consulting fees. March 29th meeting. Timeline update. Preston reporting strong progress. No consulting fees disclosed. April 12th meeting. Final approval for closing. Budget reconfirmed. No consulting fees mentioned. April 26th meeting. Deal collapse announced. Preston blames operational oversight. Recommends investigating Director of Business Development. Me. Nowhere in any official board record had Preston disclosed paying his own company $500,000. I now had everything I needed. Email proof that Preston had approved and enthusiastically supported the deal. Financial evidence that he'd embezzled money through a shell company. Board minutes proving he'd hidden that payment from governance oversight. And fabricated emails showing he'd tried to frame me. Allison helped me prepare a formal complaint. Not to Hartley Industries HR. Not to Preston's board. We went straight to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Corporate fraud at a publicly traded company. We filed on a Friday afternoon. Attached every piece of evidence. The email chains from my personal backup. The financial records showing the shell company payment. The board minutes proving non-disclosure. Screenshots of the fabricated emails Preston had created. A detailed timeline showing how Preston had systematically erased evidence and constructed false records to blame me. The SEC took cases like this seriously, especially when the documentation was this thorough. We also filed a wrongful termination lawsuit in civil court. With the SEC complaint as foundation, Allison was confident we'd win. Monday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls. 6 were from unknown numbers, 3 from former colleagues, 2 from Pamela in HR, and 6 from Preston Hartley himself. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I made coffee and waited. The SEC didn't move slowly when they had solid evidence. By 10 a.m., my phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed Howard Chun, board chairman of Hartley Industries. I answered. Nina, his voice was strained. We need to talk. The SEC contacted us this morning with some very serious allegations. I stayed calm. They're not allegations, Howard. They're facts. Preston embezzled company funds and fabricated evidence to cover it up. There was a long pause. Can you come to the office? The full board wants to meet with you. 2 p.m. today. Please. I'll be there, I said. But my attorney comes with me. That afternoon, Allison and I walked into the Hartley Industries boardroom. 15 board members sat around the table. Preston wasn't there. Howard sat at the head, looking 10 years older than the last time I'd seen him. Nina, Howard began, his voice heavy. We've spent the weekend reviewing the evidence you provided to the SEC. The emails, the financial records, the board minutes. We had our forensic team verify everything. His hands clasped together on the table. Everything you claimed is accurate. Preston did approve the Meridian acquisition at every stage. He did create the fabricated email thread, and he did pay his personal consulting firm $500,000 without board disclosure. The other board members looked shell-shocked. Some angry, some embarrassed. All of them realizing they'd been manipulated. Where's Preston now, I asked. Howard's expression hardened. We suspended him this morning. His access to all company systems has been revoked. We've retained outside counsel to conduct a full investigation. The SEC has opened a formal inquiry. One of the board members, Eleanor Wu, leaned forward. Nina, we owe you an enormous apology. We should have questioned Preston's version of events. Should have demanded to see the evidence ourselves. But he's been with this company for 20 years. We trusted him. I understand, I said carefully. But trust doesn't excuse fraud. Eleanor nodded. You're absolutely right. Which is why we'd like to discuss bringing you back. Not just as Director of Business Development. We want you as Interim VP of Operations while we sort through this mess. The salary would reflect the position. Full back pay for your administrative leave. And a formal public statement clearing your name. Allison squeezed my hand under the table. I kept my face neutral. I appreciate that. But I need guarantees. Full restoration of my reputation. A written apology from the board. And complete transparency about what happened with Preston. Howard didn't hesitate. Done. We're also implementing new governance protocols. No executive will have unilateral control over IT systems or communication records again. This should never have been possible. The meeting lasted 2 hours. We discussed terms, timelines, and next steps. By the time Allison and I left, I had a signed contract and a promise that the truth would be made public. Walking out of that building felt different than 2 weeks ago. Then, I'd been carrying a box of personal items, my career in ruins. The story broke 3 days later. CEO of Hartley Industries suspended amid embezzlement allegations. Every major business publication picked it up. The details were damning. Preston's shell company, the fabricated emails, the attempt to scapegoat a director. My name was mentioned, but this time as the whistleblower who'd exposed corporate fraud. My phone exploded with interview requests. I declined most of them, but I did agree to one. A profile piece in the Wall Street Journal about corporate governance failures. The reporter was thorough, professional. She interviewed board members, reviewed the evidence, spoke with corporate ethics experts. When the article published 2 weeks later, it was devastating for Preston. The headline read, "When Trust Becomes Fraud, How One CEO's Desperation Led to Corporate Deception." It detailed everything. Preston's obsession with the tech sector acquisition, his secret consulting fee, the systematic erasure of evidence, and most damning, the fabricated emails designed to destroy my career. The article quoted Howard Chun. We failed in our oversight responsibilities. Nina Castellano's documentation and courage prevented a miscarriage of justice. Preston's attorney released a statement denying wrongdoing, but the evidence was overwhelming. The SEC investigation continued. Civil lawsuits from shareholders began piling up. Preston's reputation, built over decades, collapsed in weeks. I returned to Hartley Industries on a Monday morning. This time, I had an office on the executive floor, corner suite with windows overlooking downtown. My title was now Vice President of Operations, the same floor where Preston had once ruled. Keisha was promoted to my executive assistant. She cried when I told her. You risked everything to help me, I said. That doesn't go unrecognized. The first week was strange. People who'd avoided me after the conference room incident now wanted to schedule meetings, apologize, explain they'd never believed Preston's version. I accepted their apologies politely, but I remembered who'd stayed silent, who'd been willing to watch me burn. Trust, once broken, doesn't fully repair. I focused on the work instead. The company needed stability. We had clients to reassure, investors to update, internal systems to rebuild. One afternoon, Howard stopped by my office. Nina, I wanted you to hear this directly from me. Preston has agreed to resign. No severance package. No golden parachute. He's also settling the SEC charges with a substantial fine and disgorgement of the embezzled funds. There's a strong possibility of criminal charges. I nodded slowly. Good. Howard sat down across from my desk. I've been on this board for 12 years. I thought I knew Preston. Thought his family legacy and long tenure meant he had integrity. I was wrong. The biggest lesson I've learned is that documentation matters more than reputation. You kept records when nobody asked you to. That's what saved you and exposed him. It's also what's changing how we operate, I said. I'd been implementing new protocols. Mandatory backup of all executive communications to external servers. Third-party auditing of consulting contracts. Regular forensic reviews of financial transactions. Howard stood up. The board is meeting next week to discuss permanent leadership. Your name is on the short list for COO. I blinked. That's Preston's old position. Was Preston's old position, Howard corrected. We need someone with integrity and attention to detail. Someone who understands the importance of proper governance. Someone the employees and investors can trust. Think about it. The offer was tempting, but I wasn't sure I wanted to stay at Hartley Industries long term. The company would always carry the stain of what had happened. After Howard left, I pulled up my personal email. I'd been receiving recruitment offers since the story broke. 3 competitors wanted to hire me. 2 startups wanted me on their boards. A consulting firm offered partnership. I had options now. Leverage. The thing I'd lacked when Preston had tried to destroy me. That evening, Allison and I met for dinner at the restaurant where we'd first discussed the case. She raised her wine glass. To documentation, she said with a grin. And to CEOs who forget that IT systems keep copies of everything. I laughed. It felt good. To receipts, I replied, clinking my glass against hers. The most powerful weapon in any workplace. 3 months later, I accepted the COO position. Not because I loved Hartley Industries, but because walking away felt like letting Preston's corruption define the company's future. The employees deserved better. The board had learned hard lessons about oversight, and I could build something stronger from the ruins. My first act as COO was implementing a whistleblower protection program, anonymous reporting channels, third-party investigation teams, guaranteed legal support for anyone reporting misconduct. If I'd had these protections, I wouldn't have needed my personal email backup system. But the reality was, most companies didn't protect people who spoke up. They protected powerful people who broke rules. That needed to change. Preston's criminal trial was set for 6 months out. The SEC charges were settled, but the state was prosecuting embezzlement and fraud. His attorneys were scrambling. Without the fabricated emails to support his story, he had no defense. One afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. Preston's wife, Caroline. She looked exhausted, her designer clothes hanging loose like she'd lost weight. Nina, she said quietly, I know I have no right to ask, but I need you to understand something. I didn't know about any of it. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Caroline sat down carefully, clutching her purse. Preston kept everything separate. The business, the finances, his decisions. I trusted him completely. Now our family name is destroyed. Our savings are gone paying legal fees. And I'm left wondering who I was married to. I felt a strange mixture of anger and pity. I'm sorry for what you're going through, I said carefully. But I can't help him. Caroline shook her head quickly. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to let me apologize. On behalf of the Hartley family. What Preston did to you was unconscionable. You deserved better. She stood up, pulling an envelope from her purse. This is a letter from Preston's mother. She's 91. The scandal has devastated her. She wanted you to know that what Preston did doesn't represent the values this company was founded on. I took the envelope but didn't open it. After Caroline left, I sat alone in my office. The letter remained on my desk, unopened. I wasn't interested in Preston's family's grief. They'd benefited from his position for decades, lived off the company name he'd sullied. But I understood Caroline's position. She was collateral damage, like me, just in a different way. That weekend, I finally opened the letter. Preston's mother's handwriting was shaky but clear. Dear Nina, I am ashamed of my son. The company my husband built was founded on integrity and honest work. Preston betrayed those values. He betrayed you. I cannot undo his actions, but I want you to know that we stand behind the board's decision. You have shown more honor in crisis than my son showed in decades. The Hartley name will recover because of people like you. Thank you for your courage. Elizabeth Hartley. I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer. It didn't change anything, but it reminded me that corruption was individual, not institutional. One person's fraud didn't define an entire organization. The company could rebuild. 6 months after the scandal broke, Preston's trial concluded. He was convicted on 3 counts of embezzlement and 2 counts of fraud, sentenced to 4 years in federal prison, and ordered to pay restitution. The judge's statement was scathing. Mr. Hartley abused his position of trust to enrich himself and attempted to destroy an innocent employee's career to cover his crimes. This represents a fundamental betrayal of corporate responsibility and human decency. I didn't attend the trial. Didn't need to. The justice system had worked, eventually. Slowly, but it had worked. Hartley Industries continued moving forward. Stock prices had recovered. Client confidence was rebuilding. We'd landed 3 major contracts in the past quarter. The company was proving it could survive scandal and emerge stronger. One morning, I received an email from a young analyst named Tomas Reeves. He worked in the finance division. The email was marked urgent. Ms. Castellano, I need to report a concern about expense irregularities in the procurement department. I have documentation, but I'm worried about retaliation. Can we speak confidentially? I smiled and immediately scheduled a meeting. This was exactly why I'd built the whistleblower program. That afternoon, Tomas sat nervously in my office. He'd brought a folder of expense reports showing a pattern of inflated invoices. The procurement director was apparently running a kickback scheme with vendors. Small amounts, carefully hidden. But over time, it added to hundreds of thousands. I reviewed his documentation. It was thorough, well organized, and damning. You did the right thing bringing this to me, I said. You're protected under our whistleblower policy. No retaliation, no career consequences. We'll investigate immediately. Tomas exhaled with relief. I was terrified. But after what you went through, I figured if anyone would take this seriously, it would be you. After he left, I called the board and our external auditors. The investigation began that week. The procurement director was suspended within days, eventually fired and charged criminally. The pattern continued. Problems that might have been buried under the old regime now came to light. Because people trusted the system. Trusted that speaking up wouldn't destroy them. I thought about that conference room meeting where Preston had blamed me. How scared I'd been. How alone. But I'd kept records. Fought back. Exposed the truth. And in doing so, I changed an entire company's culture. Now, when my phone buzzed with reports of misconduct, I didn't see them as threats. I saw them as proof that transparency worked. That documentation mattered. That integrity could win. Sometimes it took longer than it should. Sometimes the powerful had to fall hard before justice arrived. But it did arrive. Eventually. You just needed the courage to keep the receipts. And the strength to show them when it mattered most. Because the truth always wins. It just needs someone brave enough to preserve it.